Intellectual property is becoming one of the most important conversations in Nigeria's creative and innovation landscape. As our music, fashion, art, technology, and cultural heritage gain global attention, the question of how to protect what we create and how to ensure creators benefit from the work has never been more urgent. IP is a safeguard and a bridge between tradition and modern innovation. To help us understand this better, we're joined by someone who works at the heart of this space. Rita is an intellectual property consultant with the Rivers State Tourism Development Agency, where she helps develop policies that protect cultural heritage and strengthen cultural tourism. She also lectures at the Rivers State University, using her expertise in IP law to shape the next generation of thinkers and practitioners. If you were to explain what intellectual property is and what registering an intellectual property entails, how would you go about that?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. So when it comes to intellectual property, you have to look at it from the point of human intellect or effort that have been put into building or creating or innovating a product. Intellectual property, IP for short, would not protect an idea. It has to be expressed either into a tangible format or um, can be linked to a product, or it's a new invention that is solving something, or the aesthetic features of a product, or maybe a confidential information or sensitive information that gives your business some edge. So you have the most common form of IPs in Nigeria would include copyright, which protects literary, artistic, musical, sound recording, broadcasts. Trademark will protect names of businesses, logos assigned or linked to the business, which could be a combination of words, numbers, devices. Patent will protect new inventions, novel inventions that are not obvious to someone within the same sector, but basically solves an issue. So you find patent mostly in automobile, pharmaceutical companies. Then you have industrial design, which protects the look and feel of a product, which could be a combination of lines and colors. Then you have what is called trade secret that protects um, anything confidential information or sensitive information that gives you an edge in the market. The most popular trade secrets that we all know is the Coca-Cola recipe. Then you have the uncommon form of intellectual property, such as plant variety that protects new genera of vines and trees. Then you have geographical indication that protects unique characteristics of agricultural products within a particular region. I'm pretty sure we all heard the news about the Ghana Kente that recently got international recognition for um, the Kente textile, right? Then you have cultural expression, which protects your culture. Then you have things like traditional knowledge. You also have your cultural IP. Um, yeah, so but when it comes to businesses, the most popular ones would be business names, which is what most people would rather opt for registering with the Corporate Affairs Commission. However, what you find out is that if a business has been using a name for, say, a minimum of 5 years consistently in Nigeria, and people can actually link that brand to that name, they enjoy what is known as an unregistered trademark protection, whereby they can't sue for trademark infringement, but they can actually sue someone for passing off, because the person is trying to take advantage of their reputation and goodwill that they have garnered or grown over the years. In the event where you do have a registered trademark, you can write to the Corporate Affairs Commission to cancel the name of that brand because of it's similar and causing confusion amongst your consumer. I believe the recent conversation around the fastest case is something that I would like people to also pay attention to. Then there is the Paystack drama over the name Zap. For copyright, you find out that disputes usually arise again around musical works, films. So unauthorized use of a copyright element, say the sound recording or musical composition, or um, adapting a book into a film without the consent of the original authors, distributing those copyrighted material. For the industrial design aspect, you're basically going to be reproducing and putting out counterfeit versions of those products in the market. Patents will be you also trying to um, abuse the monopoly that a patent owner enjoys. So for people within the automobile company or the pharmaceutical company, you find out that people are always trying to steal, say, an invention that would make a particular product function. So you're either trying to steal that by using employees or former employees, either you're poaching them or trying to like get them to recreate or reproduce that particular invention for you to use it. So the benefit of it is that IP is basically territorial in nature. What that means is if I register either a copyright or trademark, a patent or industrial design in Nigeria, I get to enjoy protection within Nigeria. However, if you have the zeal or you feel that your business has gone to a level that you want to move into another territory, say within Africa, there are regional IP protection that you can explore. So there's the Aripo IP system, sorry. There's the OWAPI IP system. So if you want to go into the French-speaking countries, rather, the OWAPI IP system is what you should be considering. If you want to go into English-speaking countries, the Aripo IP system is what you should be considering. Now, interestingly, we are not member states of any of those IP systems. However, in view of the AFTA agreement, IP protocol, which seeks to create like one single market for the 1 billion plus persons within the African continent, it also now gives you an edge where you can key into exploring your business protection, protecting your intellectual property, and also collaborating with fellow Africans thanks to the protocol. I know that conversations and negotiations and conversations have been going around the AFTA agreement adoption and ratification. Then you also need to have like a proper strategy if you want to build your business. So not, I mean, from the moment you pre-market stage, you have to consider engaging a lawyer that is versed in IP or that has specialty within the industry that you want to branch into. But if there's an IP element to it, it's advisable that before you go into the market, you have to engage the lawyer to guide you on strategies when it comes to positioning yourself. Because one good thing about IP is that it must be commercialized, right? For IP such as copyright, registration is not mandatory but it's advisable, right? There are also available remedies in the event where somebody uses your intellectual property without your consent, such as getting an injunction, asking for cost in form of damage, opting to send a cease and desist letter, or going as far as exploring litigation where you have to file proceedings at the Federal High Court, or if you so choose to explore out of court settlement or what is known as alternative dispute resolution mechanism like mediation or arbitration, that can also work. You also find out that you have institutions that are considering effective dispute resolution mechanisms for certain industry, and also because AI is now like the most popular conversations within the IP space, right? And everybody's adopting AI. But when you look at the adoption as it applies to IP, there are conversation as to unlicensed training of AI models. I mean, we recently had, I mean, it's still a growing conversation where Fave's song was remixed by an AI choir, and she had to re-record and repost and stuff like that. And it's good to see that Nigerians are now paying attention to intellectual property and also being more vocal about IP infringement, and also the government also trying to put in the right frameworks to ensure that um, Nigerian creatives and inventors are not taken advantage of. I mean, the agencies are doing their best, but we also need all hands to be on deck so that we have a strong IP system that can be emulated by other African countries and stuff like that. So yeah.
Thank you very much for that answer. So you speak a lot about the importance of registering intellectual property, and you have just mentioned some of them right now. So I want to understand, why do a lot of Nigerians shy away from registering their intellectual property? I know that there is a lot of, when people want to start businesses, the first thing they do is register with the CAC. They want to register their business name, but they don't. Nobody ever really goes into, I want to register my brand or my logo or the way I'm doing this, or like a product. Why do you think they shy away from that?
I would love to say awareness, but I mean, awareness is one of the primary. I think maybe lack of knowledge as to how intangible assets work, and also the fact that most people set up business as a way of survival. So, what can I do to make money that will keep me, that can sustain me for a period of time, right? You're not thinking about legal compliance at that point. You just want to make bread and move on with your life. It's when maybe things start to get a bit better, you now start considering things like legal compliance. Compliance will start from maybe your CAC registration, IP registration, tax compliance, industry compliance, and stuff like that, right? I mean, if you look at the category of businesses from small to big businesses and stuff like that, I mean, also looking at the statistics as to how many SMEs that we have in Nigeria, you find out that a lot of people are just more focused on the corporate angle because they do not see the intangible assets of their business. Because if you consider that aspect, you know that you can be in business in eternity, right? So if you look at the Western world, you find out that some businesses have been in existence for as long as 100 years, 150 years, and you're wondering how are they doing it? Were they just focusing on the niche industry? No. I mean, people also have to start accepting the fact that you really can do a business without having an in-house counsel, that is a lawyer working for your company and not just looking for a random lawyer out there, right? We all have areas of specialization, right?
Yeah.
So if you can afford to, I mean, from the moment you start thinking about coming up with a business structure, I want to do registration, ensure that the lawyer or the law firm you are working with gives you the best advice out there. I also believe that things changed after the pandemic. I mean, we were on lockdown for about 3 months, and I believe a lot of persons had to like rethink their business model, which is why you started seeing, or we've started seeing, a lot of persons now talking about IP as it affects the creative sector, as it affects the innovation sector. You're having more conversation now, not just about IP, but also as to data protection, because there's a marriage between these two areas, right? How do I comply in terms of what, when I get customers' details or client details or manufacturers' details, how do I protect myself and also protect them from any form of digital breach, right? I mean, the digital economy is thriving right now in Nigeria and in Africa. So at that point, prior to COVID, nobody was considering that. But seeing how our counterparts in other jurisdictions were flourishing, everyone decided to rethink and start saying, okay, I think there is potential when you're discussing intangible assets such as your copyright, business, goodwill, and stuff like that. And also the fact that, I mean, we keep doing IP awareness and education. I mean, you have more webinars now. You see the agencies trying to engage the public and the stakeholders, trying to build capacity in terms of sharing knowledge and also highlighting the importance of why you need to have either a trademark registration for your business name or a patent for that invention, because all of these IPs all have basic requirements that you must meet. So if you create something say you build a product and it has a patent element, you must ensure that it is new and novel within Nigeria and not existing anywhere. If it's copyright, originality, being in a fixed or tangible format, if it's trademark, can your consumers link your business to your trademark? That's the name or the logo that you are using. So if I see say TechPoint Africa's name, can I link it to um, what the company does? If I cannot, then that means there's a problem and I have to do a lot. So I believe the mindset has shifted. A lot of persons now see the benefits of protecting their um, human intellect in form of their creativity or innovation. I think also the fact that the populations that we have now have more youths who are very um, busy. They're creative. They have a lot of ideas or concept that they want to put out there. So everybody is trying to also protect themselves while also trying to monetize what talent or gifts that they have out there.
I have two questions off the back of that. I want to talk about accessibility. I want to talk about accessibility and how easy is it to register for these things? Do you need a lawyer? Is there a portal that people can go to and they register their brand name, register their brand colors or whatever product that they are selling? And is it cheap? Because it may be easy to say, oh, these are all the things that you need to do when you're starting a business. You want to sell shoes, and then you need to register your brand name, register your shoe design, register your, all of these things. But is this accessible enough for the small business owner to go out to do all of those? And secondly, when they register all these things, does it count globally? Like, can somebody in America still use the same brand name, the same brand color? Can somebody in America clash with them?
Okay, those are very interesting questions. So the first one, how accessible are IP registration in Nigeria? Very accessible, right? The fact that we are also transitioning from a manual or analog system to a digital system, it is accessible. Um, you can commence your registration for a copyright or a trademark or a patent or an industrial design online, right? But you also need to be able to engage the um, agencies or the trademark offices or the IP offices in question, and also considering other agencies like NOTAB or SON or the Federal Consumer Protection, where you might need some other compliance requirements. So is registration accessible? Yes. Cost will depend on who you're working with, because I mean when people think about intellectual property, I think they just link it more to or associate lawyers to it. IP in the bigger sense of it is not strictly law thing. So you have agents who are not lawyers. However, it's advisable that you work with someone who is well experienced and versed. So you go into a consultation with a lawyer who is versed in IP or IP such as copyright, trademark, patent, industrial design, right? And they give you the best. What I know and experience, and not to talk down on anybody, is that if you work with people who are not versed in that area, they are just focused on making quick money, and they will also not take you through the whole stages of registration, right? So you end up stopping at, so let's use trademark for example. Most people believe that when you get an acknowledgement letter, that counts as a trademark certificate, whereas that is not the case. And you see that a lot when you engage people who are not well versed in IP, right? Because each of these registration has a timeline for registration. So registration cost will depend on the lawyer or the law firm. Because I'm a lawyer, I'm going to speak exclusively on working with lawyers versed in IP, right? So lawyer or law firm versed in IP, right? The other part of your question was, sorry, I think I forgot that part. Can you kindly remind me of that?
Yeah, I was talking about
Okay, yeah,
if
global protection. Yeah.
IP
So
registration in
remember,
Nigeria counts
yeah,
globally.
so remember
Yeah.
in my introduction I talked about IP systems. So there's a national IP system, where your registration in Nigeria protects you within Nigeria. There's the regional IP system where you can explore the WAPI IP system or the Aripo IP system, and then also considering um, the African IP protocol, well, after African protocol. Now, for international registration, it's nothing like international registration. However, what we have is there are certain IP treaties that if your country is a member state of that treaty and you want to opt for an international registration because you are branching into those jurisdictions, remember, IP being territorial in nature is the foundation of your protection. So if you know that you're based in Nigeria, you have another outlet in, say, Ghana, and you want to go into one of the EU countries, right? There is an IP framework, say, for trademark. There's an IP framework for either the Madrid Protocol. If Nigeria is not a member state of that treaty, what that means is that whatever cost you should have, whatever discount you should have gotten for cost of registration, you won't get that discount because Nigeria is not a member state of that treaty. But if Nigeria is a member state, you get to register it, and then your registration will be protected within the territories that are member states of that treaty. So there isn't an international registration, but you can explore an IP framework for protecting your brand if you want to expand into the international market. So you have issues where someone, like you mentioned, in the US might want to use, say, your song or the name of your brand, right? And you want to enforce that right. So that's like a cross-border infringement. If you have taken the necessary steps, like you've been proactive, you're monitoring and stuff like that, and you notice it, you can, there are stages to resolving such dispute, right? You do a cease and desist letter, the person fails to comply, you now have to figure out as to whether filing a lawsuit within that jurisdiction or exploring ADR mechanism through by working with the WIPO, that's the World Intellectual Property Organization, exploring that ADR system will be the best in handling that dispute. If it's like an industry specific dispute, say gamers, a game or esports, I'm aware that certain tribunals are being set up for such, right? You can also consider working with the custom office to enforce your right in terms of controlling what products, if your products or your goods are being exported into that territory, the customs office can help you. I'm aware that, no, I'm aware, I mean, under section, I think 53 of the Copyright Act, it states that the DG, the Comptroller General of Customs, in collaboration with the Copyright Commission, can work together to enforce your right through border measures, whereby if somebody is trying to import a copyrighted material that belongs to you, they would, enforce your right there, stop it, and do the necessary things. If it applies to, say, your copyrighted work being used online, or maybe your book has been uploaded, the person that uploaded is in another jurisdiction, you can trigger what is known as the takedown notice, or like the US, under the US is called the DMCA notification, right? There is a case that Bad Bunny had with another user on YouTube. I think he was based in France, and he had uploaded certain performance of Bad Bunny in one of his stores, and they had to go back and forth. So you can see that cross-border infringements, cross-border enforcement requires all the relevant agencies to work hand in hand, right? So if and when that happens, you can commence the easy part, but when it comes to representation in terms of appearing before either a judge or a panel, it's best that you work with a lawyer versed in not just IP, but versed in dispute resolution, and also versed in that particular subject matter, so that you don't come out tomorrow crying that there was bias, or that, I mean, like Nigerians like to say, something happened behind closed doors, right? So, yeah.
All right, so I think my final question would be about intellectual property as an asset, because there's this new policy the government just introduced where intellectual property can be an asset for acquiring loans. So I want to understand how such a thing can be implemented? What's the process of valuing an intellectual property or an intellectual property registration?
So it's not something that is has been well received for a very long time, and that's because a lot of or the major institution, which is a financial institution that should be helping with this, still coming to terms as to how IP actually works, IP valuation. So there's an international valuation standard that is required for those within that space they can use to evaluate an IP. And you find out that we don't really have much IP valuers in Nigeria compared to other jurisdictions, right? And even if you decide to help a creative or a business person, or you want to, I mean, I think there's so much focus on the creative sector. Let's look at the institutions, the university, the R&D research and development centers or creative hubs that we have. How many of these people understand what funding actually means when it applies to intellectual property before they start saying, oh, I have this portfolio? Can you compile your creations or your inventions or your research into a portfolio that when you decide to use the standard for valuing those portfolios, it would be able to give you some sort of leverage when it comes to getting the funding you need and using your intangible asset as collaterals, right? So all hands needs to be on deck. That document in question is not yet a public document. However, from what I've been able to read and gather, you find out that the document seeks to engage and build capacity and awareness as to the need to start considering IP as an asset from the commercialization aspect, right? There are few banks in Nigeria, maybe one or two or three, that give some sort of funding to creatives or business owners that have potentials. But how many people have access to that? I mean, during the pandemic, I mean, it's in the news that the Lagos State government had put out a certain amount of money aside for those within the film sectors. Now, how many persons met that requirement? The Bank of Industry also once in a while put out those proposals. How many people meet that requirement? So you as a creative or as an institution, you need to put your house in order, right? Before you start considering, and like I tell people, if you're going to meet an investor and all you have is a business name registration and you do not have an IP registration, that investor is going to see you as an unserious person, right? I mean, if you look at the entertainment industry, I think I did come across a post recently that stated that Michael Jackson, who is late, earned as much as $600 million last year, and that's from his catalog. Do you, as an IP owner, have a catalog or a portfolio, an IP portfolio that consists of your asset? Because if you also want to go into a merger, your intellectual property should also be considered as an asset. What is the value of that asset at the end of the day? What are you doing to beef it up, to give it some sort of edge? That if somebody wants to commit to giving you that money to say, okay, based on our valuation and on the economy, what we're going through in Nigeria, we feel that your portfolio at the moment is worth 20 million and you're asking us for 50. Now we can go into this arrangement with you that you are going to pay us in installments in a couple of years, right? Now what you find out most times is not every creatives appreciates or honor the terms of an agreement. So there's a lot of conversations that needs to be held. We also need to train the experts. We need more people within the IP valuation sector. I mean, the minister for FMCTE has been campaigning a lot for IP to be used as collateral. And I think they also set up like a funding of some sort. But is that enough? No, it's not. We need more because creatives or business owners can be found from schools. I mean, the younger ones are, I mean, the youth, not the younger ones, the youths are also there. You have those with those within the SME sector, the private companies, the public companies, every other person out there. So what are we doing to put in place the right structure to finance these businesses using their intellectual property? I do recall attending a webinar, I think during the pandemic, and I think it was what's his name now? He used to be with Maven's Record, but he's now into gaming and stuff. Like he stated that there was a time he tried to use his catalog as an IP, and the banks were not having it. So there's that lack of trust from the major financiers, so the BOI, the financial institutions, even private, even investors who want to create like a third party funding arrangement that the creative sector, which is like the most popular one in Nigeria, can explore. So those in film, in fashion, and stuff like that. So what are we doing in terms of encouraging and trying to put who is going to balance it up if the creative does not keep to their terms? Because if you look at some creative dispute that has happened, it kind of feels like the investment you have put into that creative is not being appreciated. They don't appreciate or see the behind the scenes of what's going on when it comes to pushing out, marketing, distributing, publishing, and engaging the right stakeholders to also see that person as an asset. So you start seeing your business as an asset. Are the possibilities there? Yes. I'm aware that WIPO recently launched something when it comes to IP assets and financing. Maybe we can explore that. We need those within these sectors, not just practitioners like myself. We need those within these sectors to start seeing what they own as an asset. Because the moment you see it, you know that what you have is a business that you have to manage and pamper and build to the point that it has value. So I would advise, I mean, when I teach, I always like to reference the Dragon's Den, which is the UK program. I know I've seen a couple of episodes where because what the person coming to ask for funding they didn't have an IP registration, they probably did not get. So it also tells you that IP is very important for your business. If you do not see it, IP is like the business of everything. There's no emotions when it comes to intellectual property and asset management, building portfolio. You have to be as brutal. You don't have also the right team with you to guide you as to how to build a portfolio that would be valuable at some point where you can use it as a collateral. You're never going to get that collateral. You keep crying that the government isn't doing anything for you. So I guess that's my response to commercialization as it applies to IP assets and collateral.